The Beverly Hills mansion stood like a crystal fortress carved from the California night, its glass walls refracting starlight into 1,000 shimmering fragments. Perched on a cliff overlooking the sprawling, neon-veined city of Los Angeles, it was less a home than a monument to Victor Lang's ambition, a billionaire's cathedral where wealth and power collided. Inside, chandeliers hung like frozen constellations, casting golden shards across a sea of tuxedos and sequined gowns. The air buzzed with the clink of champagne flutes, the murmur of calculated laughter, and the faint hum of deals struck in shadowed corners. Tech titans from Silicon Valley, Hollywood stars with practiced smiles, and political sharks with eyes like knives mingled, their egos as sharp as the diamonds glittering on their wrists and throats. At the center of it all stood Victor Lang, 50, his silver hair swept back, his tailored tuxedo accentuating a frame that carried the confidence of a man who owned half the city. His grin was predatory, his presence magnetic, a silent reminder that he was the architect of Lang Tech, an empire that reshaped industries, crushed rivals, and left a trail of enemies longer than the Pacific Coast Highway. He raised a crystal flute, the champagne inside catching the light like liquid fire, and the room fell silent, every eye drawn to him. To innovation, he declared, his voice booming, resonant, a king addressing his court. To power. To a future only we can shape. The crowd leaned in, captivated, their applause a mix of envy and calculation. Some clapped to curry favor, others to mask their disdain. Lang's empire had made him untouchable, or so he thought. Then, a choke, a jagged, unnatural sound that sliced through the applause like a blade. Lang's hand shot to his throat, his flute trembling, champagne spilling over his fingers. His face twisted in agony, his piercing blue eyes widening with terror, pupils dilating as if staring into an abyss. He staggered one step, two, his free hand clawing at the air, grasping for something, someone, to save him. The flute slipped from his grip, shattering on the polished marble floor with a sound like a gunshot. He collapsed, his body crumpling like a discarded script, his silver hair splayed against the cold stone. Silence gripped the room for a heartbeat, then chaos erupted. Screams pierced the air, gowns rustled as guests surged back, glasses crashed to the floor, and panic consumed the gala like wildfire. A Hollywood actress fainted, her sequined dress pooling around her like spilled ink, her collapse more theatrical than genuine. A tech mogul barked orders at his security, his voice shrill, betraying his fear. A senator slipped toward an exit, only to find it blocked by LAPD officers storming in, their radios crackling, their faces grim under the flickering chandeliers. The police moved with practiced urgency, sealing doors, herding guests into groups, their barked commands barely audible over the din. "Nobody leaves!" shouted Detective Harris, a grizzled man with a buzz cut and a scowl, his badge flashing as he pushed through the crowd. The coroner, a wiry woman named Dr. Elena Torres, knelt beside Lang's body, her clipboard clutched tightly, her frown deepening. Her verdict came fast, delivered in a low, clinical tone to Harris. A rare poison, untraceable to all but the most meticulous mind, had stopped Lang's heart in seconds. Harris cursed under his breath, his eyes scanning the crowd for answers. "No witnesses, no weapon, no leads," he muttered, his frustration palpable. The guests offered nothing but polished lies and nervous glances, their alibis rehearsed, their secrets buried deep. The mansion, once a beacon of wealth, was now a crime scene, its opulence tainted by death. Amid the chaos, a lean figure in a charcoal suit moved unnoticed, his steps silent, his presence a shadow among the glittering throng. Agent Gray, mid-30s, with a chiseled jaw and blue-gray eyes that cut through deception like a laser, was no ordinary man. Known only to Clara Monroe, a steely FBI liaison with a no-nonsense edge, and Marcus, his gruff Brooklyn-born fixer, Gray was the ghost who solved the unsolvable, the mind that saw what others missed. His suit was tailored to perfection, understated yet sharp, blending into the crowd while his gaze dissected it. Clara caught his eye from across the room, her dark hair pulled tight, Her FBI badge clipped to her belt, her nod urgent, a silent plea for his genius. Gray's lips curled into a sly smirk, his voice low, laced with a wit that could disarm or destroy. "Murder's a bold opening act," he murmured, barely audible over the crowd's din, his words meant only for himself. His eyes snagged on a single detail, a smudged crimson lipstick mark on Lang's shattered flute, stark against the crystal, out of place in the sea of wealth and pretense. The shade was vivid, almost defiant, a deep crimson with a burgundy undertone, rare, expensive. It wasn't a mistake, it was a signature, a taunt, or a misdirection. His mind ignited, questions sparking like a live wire. Why that shade? Why left behind, when a killer this precise would avoid errors? He was already 2 steps ahead, his intellect a blade honed for the truth, the game begun. Gray sidestepped the police tape with the ease of a man who'd never been caught, ignoring Harris's barked orders and the forensic team's futile kits. He didn't need fingerprints or DNA. He read people, rooms, moments, like a grandmaster studying a chessboard, every move revealing intent. He glided past the sobbing actress, her tears more performance than grief, her mascara-streaked face a calculated bid for sympathy. He noted her, but his focus shifted to a trembling waiter from South Central, his apron stained with champagne, his eyes darting nervously. The waiter, barely 20, stood near a catering table, his hands fidgeting with a tray, his face pale under the chandelier's glow. Gray's smile was disarming, warm enough to lower defenses but sharp enough to probe, a tool as precise as his mind. "Rough night," he said, his tone light, almost friendly, as he leaned against the table. "Anyone linger near Lang's drink before the toast?" The waiter, named Javier according to his name tag, stuttered, his hands shaking. I don't know, man. It was crazy busy. But maybe a woman in a crimson gown." She brushed by his table, had gloves on. "Black ones? Weird, right? Nobody wears gloves at these things." Gray's mind hummed. Gloves meant intent, preparation, a killer who planned every detail. Poison demanded precision, access, nerve. He leaned closer, his voice conspiratorial, his eyes piercing. "You're sharp, Javier. What else did you see? Her face, maybe?" Javier shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. "Didn't see her face. Just the gown, the gloves. She moved fast, like she didn't want to be noticed." Gray's smirk widened, his mental map of the crime scene sharpening. The crimson gown was a beacon, a deliberate clue, or a clever plant. "You're doing great," he said, slipping Javier a card with a burner number. "See her again, you call me. Nobody else." Javier nodded, wide-eyed, clutching the card like a lifeline as Gray moved on, his steps deliberate, his senses attuned to the room's pulse. The mansion's grandeur felt oppressive now, its glass walls reflecting the chaos like a distorted mirror. Guests huddled in groups, whispering, their faces a mix of fear, indignation, and carefully masked guilt. Gray scanned them, cataloging tells, the senator's nervous tick as he adjusted his cufflinks, the actress's staged hysterics, the tech mogul's too-quick alibi about being in the restroom during the toast. He paused by Lang's body, now covered with a white sheet, Dr. Torres still scribbling notes nearby. The crimson lipstick smudge on the shattered flute gnawed at him, a deliberate mark in a crime meant to be invisible. He crouched, unnoticed by the distracted detectives, and studied the glass shards scattered across the marble. The lipstick was specific, a deep crimson with a burgundy undertone, rare, not the kind found in every makeup bag. It was sold at a boutique on Rodeo Drive, Gray recalled, a place frequented by the elite, where exclusive cosmetics cost more than most people's rent. Could the killer have sourced it there? Or was it planted to lead him astray? He filed the thought away, his mental ledger growing, each clue a puzzle piece in a game he was born to win. He stood, his eyes drifting to the service exit where Javier had seen the crimson gown vanish. The corridor beyond was dark, unlit, a stark contrast to the gala's opulence. Gray moved toward it, his steps silent, his mind already mapping the mansion's layout from blueprints he'd memorized hours earlier. In the mansion's security hub, a cramped room buzzing with monitors and the faint hum of electronics, Marcus slammed the laptop shut, his weathered face etched with frustration. A former CIA operative turned fixer, Marcus was Gray's anchor, his loyalty as unyielding as his sarcasm, his Brooklyn accent thick as asphalt. "Cams are wiped cleaner than my ma's deli counter after Sunday rush," he growled, stuffing his hands in his pockets. Gray leaned against the wall, his smirk unfazed, his blue-gray eyes alight with calculation. "Wiped means desperate. Amateurs hide, professionals slip." His fingers danced over the keyboard, his movements fluid, almost balletic, pulling up a deleted frame in seconds, a flicker of that crimson gown vanishing through a service exit, a gloved hand trailing the doorframe. The feed cut abruptly, sabotaged, but not before Gray spotted a faint reflection in the glass door, a serpent-shaped pendant dangling from the woman's neck, its emerald eyes catching the light. His pulse quickened, not from fear but from the thrill of a puzzle unfolding. "Our killer's a craftsman," he said, his voice steady but electric. "But I'm the critic who sees the flaws." Clara burst in, her FBI badge glinting under the fluorescent light, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun, her expression all business. "Lang's enemies are a mile long, corporate rivals, scorned lovers, even his own board. Pick one." Her tone was clipped, urgent, but Gray's eyes never left the frozen frame on the screen. "I pick the one nobody sees yet," he replied, his smirk widening, his mind already tracing the serpent's trail. Outside, in the mansion's sprawling garden, a shadow slipped through the palm trees, their serpent-shaped cufflink catching a glint of moonlight. Gray clocked it from the window, his instincts razor-sharp, but he didn't pursue, not yet. The shadow was watching him, but why were they already one step behind? Clara paced the security hub, her boots clicking on the tile, her frustration palpable. "The LAPD's calling this a dead end," she said, her voice low, meant only for Gray. "No prints, no toxins in the champagne, no witnesses who saw anything concrete. They're ready to pin it on a random guest and call it a day." Gray straightened, his smirk sharp, his eyes gleaming with a mix of amusement and determination. "They're looking at the board, not the players. This wasn't random, it was personal." He gestured to the flute's shards, now bagged as evidence by the forensics team, the lipstick smudge glowing under the chandelier's light. "That's not an accident. It's a message." Clara's eyes narrowed, her mind sharp but lacking Gray's instinct for the hidden. "A message for who?" "Lang's dead." Gray's gaze flicked to the garden, where the shadow had vanished. "Maybe for me," he said, his voice low, a hint of thrill in his tone. Clara frowned, her skepticism battling her trust in him. "You're saying the killer knew you'd be here?" Gray's smirk didn't waver. "I'm saying they're counting on someone like me." Clara shook her head, but she didn't press. She knew Gray's methods, unorthodox, infuriating, but always right. "You've got 48 hours before the feds take over," she said, her voice firm. "Find something, or this becomes a circus." Gray nodded, already moving, his mind 3 steps ahead. "Circuses are my specialty," he quipped, slipping toward the service exit where the crimson gown had disappeared, his steps silent, his senses attuned to the mansion's pulse. The service exit led to a narrow corridor, its walls lined with catering carts and staff lockers, the air thick with the scent of spilled wine and kitchen grease. Gray moved silently, his senses heightened, every detail a potential clue, the scuff of a heel on the tile, the faint trace of perfume lingering in the air, floral with a hint of spice, matching the crimson gown's elegance. He found a discarded glove, black leather, tucked behind a crate, its stitching embossed with a faint serpent design. His pulse quickened, not from danger but from the puzzle's clarity sharpening. The glove was intentional, another breadcrumb in a trail meant to be followed, or a trap meant to ensnare. He pocketed it, his gloved fingers careful, his mind mapping the mansion's layout, recalling blueprints he'd studied before arriving. The corridor led to a side gate, where a security camera hung limp, its wires cut with surgical precision. Gray knelt, examining the sabotage, clean, professional, done with a tool small enough to conceal in a clutch. The killer was meticulous, but not flawless. A single strand of dark hair clung to the gate's latch, barely visible in the moonlight. Gray collected it, his movements precise, his mind already analyzing, DNA, or another plant? He stepped into the garden, the palm trees swaying in the night breeze, their shadows dancing like serpents. The figure he'd seen earlier was gone, but their presence lingered, a weight in the air. Gray's smirk returned, his confidence unshaken. "You're good," he murmured to the absent shadow. "But I'm better." Back in the security hub, Marcus was pacing, his weathered hands stuffed in his pockets, his scowl deeper than usual. "You're chasing ghosts, Gray," he said, his voice rough but laced with grudging respect. "That gown, the glove, it's too neat, like they want you to find it." Gray leaned back in a chair, his posture relaxed but his eyes alight with calculation. "Exactly. They're playing my game, Marcus. The trick is knowing when they think they're winning." He pulled up the mansion's guest list on the laptop, cross-referencing names with known Langtech rivals. One stood out, Sophia Reed, Lang's former partner, ousted in a brutal merger 5 years ago. Her tech firm, Reed Innovations, was based in Boston, and her name was tied to a recent lawsuit against Langtech for intellectual property theft. Gray's fingers paused on the keyboard, his mind connecting dots. Sophia's expertise in biochemistry, her access to elite circles, her motive rooted in betrayal. The crimson gown, the serpent pendant, could they point to her? Or was she a pawn in a larger scheme? "Boston," Gray said, his voice decisive. "That's where the trail goes next." Marcus groaned, rubbing his temples. "You and your damn hunches. You sure about this?" Gray's smirk widened. "I'm sure I'm 2 steps ahead." He stood, slipping the glove and hair into an evidence bag, his mind already on the move. But as he stepped toward the door, a faint buzz from his burner phone stopped him, a text from an unknown number. "You're looking in the right place, but for the wrong reasons." Gray's eyes narrowed, his pulse steady but his mind racing. Who knew he was here, and how were they watching? The private jet cut through the night sky, its cabin dim, the hum of engines a steady pulse as Gray sat alone, his thoughts a labyrinth of clues and possibilities. Clara had arranged the flight, her FBI clearance bypassing commercial delays, but even she didn't know the full scope of Gray's mission. He stared out the window, the clouds below a silver sea under the moon, his mind replaying the gala's chaos, the lipstick smudge, the crimson gown, the serpent pendant, the glove, the hair. Each clue was a thread, but the pattern was elusive, a tapestry woven by a mind as sharp as his own. His mentor's death, years ago, gnawed at him, a poisoning case he couldn't solve, the one failure that drove his relentless pursuit of truth. "You taught me to see," he murmured to the empty cabin, his voice soft, tinged with pain. "I won't miss this one." The jet descended toward Boston, the city's fog-shrouded skyline emerging like a ghost. Gray adjusted his cufflinks, one embossed with a subtle G, a reminder of who he was when the world wasn't watching. He was ready for Sophia Reed, ready for the serpent, ready for whatever waited in the shadows. But as the wheels touched down, a question lingered, sharp as a blade: was he chasing the killer, or was the killer leading him? Boston's Back Bay glittered with old money and new secrets, its brownstone mansions standing like sentinels along the Charles River. Sophia Reed's penthouse towered above, a sleek glass fortress that screamed wealth and control. Gray, posing as James Carver, a venture capitalist with a taste for high-stakes deals, stepped into her exclusive charity auction, a glittering affair packed with Boston's elite, bankers, academics, tech moguls, all bidding on art and influence. His charcoal suit was understated but impeccable, his presence commanding without effort. He moved through the crowd like a phantom, his blue-gray eyes scanning faces, body language tells. Sophia stood across the room, mid-40s, polished as a diamond, Her auburn hair swept into an elegant updo, her black dress hugging her frame like a second skin. She bid on a rare Monet, her smile practiced but her eyes guarded, a predator in her own domain. Gray slid beside her, offering a martini from a passing tray, his grin disarming, his voice smooth as velvet. "Heard you and Victor Lang parted on bad terms," he said, locking eyes with her, his tone light but probing. Sophia laughed, cool as ice, but her fingers tightened around her glass, a tell Gray clocked instantly. "Ancient history." She deflected, sipping her drink, but her eyes flicked to his, assessing. "Your new money, Mr. Carver. What brings you to Boston?" Gray leaned closer, his smirk sharp. "Opportunities. And secrets." He noticed a serpent-shaped brooch pinned to her dress, its emerald eyes glinting like a warning, matching the pendant from the gala footage. "Nice accessory," he quipped, his tone casual but razor-edged, testing her reaction. She brushed it off, but her micro-expressions betrayed her, a flicker of fear, a tightening jaw, a glance toward a secure room where a locked briefcase sat, its handle engraved with a serpent. Over the next hour, Gray played a game of verbal chess, his questions veiled in charm, each quip a probe into Sophia's defenses. He complimented her business acumen, drawing her out, watching her relax under his calculated flattery. "Reed Innovations is thriving," he said, swirling his martini. "Must sting that Lang took credit for your work." Sophia's smile tightened, her eyes flashing with suppressed rage. "He was a thief in a suit," she said, her voice low, almost a hiss. Gray's mind catalogued her words, her tone, her body language. She was angry, but not reckless. She knew more than she let on. He steered the conversation to the auction, noting her frequent glances at the secure room. "That briefcase must hold something special," he said, his tone playful but pointed. Sophia's hand froze mid-sip, her composure wavering for a fraction of a second. "Just business papers," she said too quickly. Gray's smirk widened. He had her. He excused himself, slipping toward the secure room under the guise of admiring a sculpture, his movements fluid, unnoticed by the crowd. The lock was biometric, but Gray's tech, a discreet device hidden in his watch, bypassed it in seconds. Inside, he found the briefcase, its serpent engraving glinting under the dim light. He cracked it open, revealing documents, chemical formulas, emails to an anonymous contact, and a list of names, Lang's at the top, crossed out. His pulse quickened. This was the poison's blueprint, and Sophia was the architect. But why leave it here so exposed? Was it a trap, or a miscalculation? Before he could dig deeper, a guard approached, his hand on a concealed weapon. Gray closed the briefcase, his movements calm, his mind racing. "Wrong room," he said, flashing a grin that disarmed the guard long enough for him to slip out. Back in the auction hall, Sophia was gone, her absence a silent alarm. Gray scanned the crowd, spotting her slipping toward a side exit, her face pale. He followed, weaving through guests, his steps silent but urgent. In a private library, away from the crowd, he cornered her, his voice low, unyielding. "You sold the poison's formula to the Order, didn't you?" Sophia's composure cracked, her eyes darting to the door, her hands trembling. "You don't understand," she hissed. "Lang ruined me, stole my patents, tanked my company. The Order offered a way out." Gray's eyes softened, empathy surfacing like a ghost from his past. "I know betrayals sting. My mentor was double-crossed, left me to clean up the pieces. I couldn't save him, but I can save you. Help me, Sophia, and you walk free." He slid a burner phone across the table, a contact preloaded. "Call them. Disappear safely." Sophia hesitated, her eyes locked on his, torn between fear and trust. She took the phone, her fingers trembling, and nodded. "They're called the Order. New Orleans. That's all I know." Gray vanished into Boston's icy streets, leaving her rattled, his mind already on the next move. What was in those documents, and who was the Order's true target? Outside, Boston's fog wrapped the city like a shroud, the Charles River a dark ribbon below. Gray stood on a rooftop, his breath visible in the cold, his mind a storm of connections: lipstick, serpent, formula, Sophia's fear. The Order wasn't just a group, it was a network, disciplined, ruthless, with a reach that spanned cities. He pulled out his burner phone, texting Marcus. New Orleans. Serpent's Nest. Marcus replied instantly. You're insane, but I'm in. Gray's smirk returned, his confidence unshaken, but a flicker of doubt crept in. The Order knew he was coming. How? The shadow in the garden, the text on his phone, Sophia's quick surrender, it all felt orchestrated, like he was a piece on their board. He pushed the thought aside, his mentor's voice echoing in his mind. Stay 2 steps ahead, always. Gray stepped into the night, the city's pulse matching his own, the hunt far from over. Who was pulling the strings, and what did they want with him? The Las Vegas Strip burned like a neon fever, its casinos blazing with promises of fortune and ruin under a starless desert sky. The air was thick with cigarette smoke, cheap cologne, and the electric hum of a city that thrived on desperation. Tourists and gamblers surged through the streets, their voices a chaotic mix of laughter and shouts, while signs for the Bellagio and Caesar's Palace flashed like beacons. Agent Gray stepped from a black sedan, his tailored black suit absorbing the neon glow, his presence a shadow in the frenzy. Posing as Vincent Cole, a high roller with a taste for risk, he adjusted his cufflinks, one embossed with a subtle G, and scanned the strip with blue-gray eyes that missed nothing. His target was the Serpent's Den, a sleek casino owned by Julian Voss, a sharp-minded lieutenant of the mysterious order. The serpent-shaped pendant from the Beverly Hills gala, the crimson gown, and Sophia Reed's confession in Boston pointed here, to a man whose cunning rivaled Gray's. Julian was no thug. He was a strategist in a game Gray was determined to win. His burner phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, his Brooklyn-born fixer. Casino's a fortress. Watch yourself. Gray's lips curled into a sly smirk. Always, he murmured, slipping into the crowd, his mind mapping the casino's layout from memorized blueprints. The anonymous text from the gala. You're looking in the right place, but for the wrong reasons. Nod at him. Was Julian the key to the order, or a decoy? Inside the Serpent's Den, the air was cooler, laced with the metallic tang of slot machines and the clink of chips. Chandeliers cast fractured light over gamblers, their faces etched with hope or despair. Dealers moved with precision, while waitresses in black dresses wove through the crowd, trays heavy with overpriced drinks. Gray's eyes clocked cameras, exits, and staff tells, tense shoulders, darting glances, a house on edge. At the center, a high-stakes poker table drew the elite, their Rolexes glinting, their laughter forced. Julian Voss sat there, mid-30s, lean as a blade, his dark hair slicked back, his eyes sharp with calculation. A serpent tattoo coiled around his wrist, barely visible under a cuff, matching the gala's pendant. Gray approached, his stride confident, his smirk disarming. "Room for one more?" he asked, his voice smooth as bourbon, pulling a chair. Julian's gaze flicked up, his smile cold but intrigued. "If you can afford the stakes, Mr. Cole," Gray replied, sliding chips forward, his eyes locked on Julian's. "And I always win." The other players, a tech heiress, a Russian oligarch, glanced over, but Julian's focus was a laser, his mind as sharp as Gray's. The poker game was a duel, each card a move in a larger game. Gray leaned back, his banter sharp. "You bluff like you're hiding a body," he told Julian, his tone playful but pointed. Julian's smile tightened, his fingers brushing the tattoo. "And you play like you know too much," he countered, his voice low, eyes narrowing. Gray's mind hummed, cataloging Julian's tells, a lip twitch, a finger tap. He slipped a micro-tracker onto Julian's jacket while passing a drink, his movements seamless. The game stretched, tension building like a storm. Gray won a hand with a calculated bluff, his smirk widening as Julian's composure flickered. "You're good, Cole," Julian said, his voice ice. "But good gets you killed here." Gray leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Then I'm great." Julian stood, slipping toward a back room. Gray followed, senses alert. Was Julian leading him to answers, or a trap? In the back room, dimly lit with leather chairs and a mahogany bar, Julian poured 2 whiskeys, his movements deliberate. "You're not here for poker," he said, handing Gray a glass, his eyes probing. Gray sipped, his smirk steady. "I'm here for who killed Victor Lang." Julian's laugh was sharp, but his hand tightened on his glass. "Lang had enemies. Why you?" Gray's tone cut like a blade. "I see what others miss. Like your tattoo." Julian's eyes flashed, his composure cracking. "You're digging in dangerous places." Gray leaned closer, unfazed. "That's where truth hides." A goon burst in, whispering urgently. Julian moved for the door, Gray's tracker pinging. He tailed Julian through the casino's maze, the neon glow casting shadows. Outside, Julian headed for a black SUV. Gray followed, weaving through crowds, his mental map of the strip, every alley, every shortcut, guiding him. The chase erupted as Julian's SUV peeled out. Gray commandeered a taxi with a flashed badge and $100 bill. "Follow them," he ordered, voice calm but urgent. The driver, a grizzled man in a Dodgers cap, floored it, weaving through traffic. The strip blurred, Bellagio fountains, Caesar's columns. Julian's car veered into an alley, Gray close behind. Goons piled out, guns drawn. Gray ducked, using cars as cover, his movements silent, his mind 3 steps ahead. He disarmed a goon with a swift strike, his quip cutting through. "Amateurs aim, professionals think." He cornered Julian against a dumpster, the air thick with heat. "Where's Isabel?" Gray demanded, eyes locked on Julian's. The lieutenant smirked, blood on his lip. "New Orleans. You're in her endgame." A knife flashed. Gray disarmed him, tossing it aside. "Knives are for amateurs," he quipped. Julian vanished into the crowd as sirens wailed, the tracker pinging south. New Orleans. Was Julian's warning a slip, or a lure? Gray boarded a red-eye flight, the cabin dim, engines humming as he sat alone, thoughts a labyrinth of clues. The serpent tattoo, crimson gown, Sophia's formula, Julian's words, each a thread, the pattern elusive. His mentor's death, a poisoning he couldn't solve, drove him. "You taught me to see," he murmured, voice tinged with pain. New Orleans awaited, hiding Isabel Voss, the order's mastermind. Clara's text hit his burner. "Poison matches your mentors. Be careful." Gray's jaw tightened, resolve hardening. The jet descended, the Mississippi glinting below. Was he chasing Isabel, or was she pulling him in? New Orleans pulsed with jazz and secrets, the French Quarter alive with Mardi Gras chaos. Beads rained from balconies, masks hid faces, music spilled from bars, the air thick with bourbon and sweat. Gray, posing as Ethan Blake, a private investigator, navigated the streets, his black coat blending into the revelry. His target was a Creole townhouse, its iron balconies dripping with moss, where Isabel Voss hid. Clara met him in a Bourbon Street cafe, her badge hidden, voice tight. "Lang's poison matches your mentors," she said, sliding a file. "Synthetic, untraceable. The orders work." Gray's eyes darkened, pain flickering. "He died on a case I couldn't crack," he said, voice steady but heavy. "It's why I never stop." Clara's eyes searched his. "This is personal." Gray's smirk was faint. "Everything is when you see what I see." Under Mardi Gras cover, Gray infiltrated the townhouse, silent amid drums and trumpets. The interior was a maze of velvet curtains and candlelight, heavy with incense. He found a hidden room, walls lined with files, Lang's bribes, sabotaged rivals, enemies spanning decades. A safe held an antidote vial, its serpent label glinting. Gray's mind connected dots. Sophia's formula, Julian's tattoo, but the picture was incomplete. Footsteps echoed. He slipped behind a curtain as Isabel entered, mid-30s, dark eyes burning with cunning, her serpent tattoo pulsing. She was as brilliant as Gray, her presence electric. "You're persistent," she said, sensing him. Gray stepped out, smirk steady. "You're predictable." Their banter was a duel. "Lang deserved it," she snarled, pain raw. "He crushed my family." Gray's empathy flickered. "Revenge poisons you too." She hesitated, gazes locked, but slipped away, leaving a note. "Close, but not enough." Gray found a coerced chemist in the basement, securing the antidote, proving Isabel's guilt. A Chicago address in the files pointed to another target. Was Isabel luring him, or retreating? Chicago's skyline glittered like a jagged crown, its towers piercing a sky heavy with rain. The Art Institute of Chicago, its stone lions glistening under streetlights, hosted Nathan Lang's gala, a glittering affair of power and pretense. Nathan, Victor Lang's estranged younger brother, was a tech mogul in his own right, his wealth built on the scraps of Langteca's empire. Gray, posing as Daniel Harper, a financial journalist with a knack for digging too deep, stepped into the gala, his charcoal suit sharp, his blue-gray eyes scanning the crowd. The air was thick with the scent of champagne, orchids, and ambition, the room alive with the clink of glasses and the murmur of Chicago's elite, bankers, politicians, and tech barons vying for Nathan's favor. Gray's mission was clear. The Chicago address from Isabel's New Orleans files pointed to Nathan as the order's next move. The serpent tattoo, the antidote vial, Sophia's formula, and Julian's warning. "You're in her endgame," swirled in Gray's mind, pieces of a puzzle nearing completion. His burner phone buzzed, a text from Clara Monroe, his FBI liaison. "Nathan's clean on paper, but watch him. Something's off." Gray's smirk was faint, his voice low. "Off is my specialty." The anonymous text from the gala still lingered. "You're looking in the right place, but for the wrong reasons." Was Nathan a target, a pawn, or a player in Isabel's game? Inside the Art Institute, marble floors gleamed under chandeliers, and priceless paintings watched from the walls. Nathan Lang, late 40s, stood at the center, his silver-flecked hair and tailored tuxedo a mirror of his late brother Victor, but his eyes were colder, his smile sharper. Gray approached, his journalist cover flawless, a notepad in hand. "Mr. Lang, your brother's death must weigh heavily," he said, his tone sympathetic but probing, his eyes locking onto Nathan's. The mogul's smile faltered, his fingers tightening around a whiskey glass. "Victor made enemies," he said, his voice smooth but edged. "I'm just cleaning up his mess." Gray's mind hummed, catching the lie in Nathan's tone, a slight waver, a glance toward a private balcony. "You're doing well for a clean-up crew," Gray quipped, gesturing to the opulent gala. Nathan laughed, but his eyes were ice, assessing Gray as a threat. Gray pushed further, his voice casual but sharp. "Heard you funded some unconventional projects. Anything tied to the order?" Nathan's face froze, his composure cracking for a split second. "You're fishing, Harper," he said, turning away. Gray's smirk widened, he'd struck a nerve. He slipped toward the balcony, his movements silent, clocking Nathan's glance at a security guard with a serpent-shaped lapel pin. The order was here, and Nathan was no bystander. The gala's hum was shattered by a scream. A glass chandelier exploded above, shards raining down as guests dove for cover. Gray's instincts kicked in, his body low, his eyes scanning for the source. A sniper's laser dot danced across the room, targeting Nathan. Gray tackled him behind a marble pillar, glass crunching underfoot, his voice steady. "Stay down unless you want to join your brother." Nathan's eyes widened, fear mixing with defiance. "You don't know what you're in," he hissed. Gray's smirk was razor-sharp. "I know enough." He spotted the sniper's perch, a rooftop across the street, visible through the gala's floor-to-ceiling windows. Rain lashed the glass, the Chicago loop a blur of neon and shadow. Gray sprinted for the exit, weaving through panicked guests, his mental map of the city guiding him. Every street, every alley burned into his mind. Outside, the loop was a maze of rain-slicked pavement and honking taxis. He scaled a fire escape, his movements fluid, reaching the rooftop in seconds. The sniper was gone, but a burner phone lay abandoned, its screen glowing with a single message. San Francisco. Palace of Fine Arts. Midnight. Gray's pulse quickened, not from exertion but from the thrill of the chase. The phone's call log showed a New Orleans number, Isabel's. Nathan's role was clearer. He was funding the order, but was he their puppet or their architect? Gray pocketed the phone, his mind racing. San Francisco was next, and Isabel was waiting. The flight to San Francisco was a blur, the cabin dim, the Pacific below a black void. Gray sat alone, the antidote vial from New Orleans in his pocket, its serpent label a constant reminder of the stakes. His mentor's death, years ago, haunted him, a poisoning case he couldn't solve, the failure that drove him to see what others missed. "You taught me to look deeper," he murmured, his voice soft, tinged with pain. Clara's text hit his burner. "Targets Mia Chin, Texio. Orders planning another hit. Be there." Gray's jaw tightened, his resolve iron. The jet descended, San Francisco's fog-shrouded skyline emerging like a ghost. The Palace of Fine Arts loomed ahead, its golden dome glowing under moonlight, a perfect stage for Isabel's endgame. Gray, now posing as Ethan Grant, a cybersecurity consultant, adjusted his cufflinks and stepped into the gala, his senses alert. The air was heavy with salt from the bay, the scent of roses, and the murmur of tech elites. Mia Chin, early 30s, stood at the center, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd, her startup the talk of Silicon Valley. Gray's mission was to save her, but Isabel's note, "Close but not enough," echoed in his mind. Was Mia the target, or was Gray the prize? The Palace of Fine Arts was a vision of grandeur, its columns reflecting in the lagoon, its arches draped in ivy. The gala buzz was Silicon Valley's brightest, coders, investors, visionaries, their voices a mix of ambition and arrogance. Gray moved through the crowd, his cover seamless, his eyes clocking tells, a waiter's nervous glance, a guest's serpent-shaped cufflink. Mia was surrounded, her laugh polished but her posture tense. Gray approached, offering a glass of champagne, his smile disarming. "Your startup's making waves, Ms. Chin," he said, his voice smooth, probing. "Heard you cross Lang Tech once. Any enemies from that?" Mia's eyes flickered, her smile tightening. "Lang was a shark. I swam faster." Gray's mind hummed, she knew something. He leaned closer, his tone conspiratorial. "Someone's targeting you. Stick with me." Mia's face paled, but she nodded, trusting his intensity. Before he could say more, the lights flickered, plunging the gala into darkness. Screams erupted, glass shattered, and Gray's instincts kicked in. He grabbed Mia, pulling her behind a column as a figure in a crimson gown. Isabel moved through the chaos, her serpent tattoo glinting in the moonlight. Gray's heart raced, not from fear but from the thrill of the endgame. The blackout was Isabel's move, a calculated strike. Gray's eyes adjusted, his mental map of the palace guiding him, every exit, every shadow. He ushered Mia toward a side door, his voice low. "Stay close. She's here." Mia's breath itched, but she followed, her trust in Gray absolute. Outside, the lagoon reflected the chaos, fog curling like a shroud. Isabel stood by the water, her dark eyes burning, her presence electric. "You're late," she said, her voice a blade, her serpent tattoo pulsing. Gray's smirk was steady. "You're predictable." Their banter was a duel, intellects clashing. "Lang deserved it," she snarled, pain raw. "He stole my family's legacy, crushed us." Gray's empathy flickered, his mentor's loss echoing her pain. "Revenge poisons you too," he said, his voice soft but firm. I've seen it. Isabel hesitated, their gazes locked, but she raised the syringe, another dose of the poison. Gray moved faster, disarming her with a fluid strike, the antidote vial ready in his hand. He injected Mia, saving her as she gasped, the poison neutralized. Isabel slipped into the fog, her voice lingering. The order sees you, Gray. He found a flash drive in her dropped clutch, its files detailing the order's network, names, dates, Lang's crimes, and a second target, a senator tied to Langtech. The trail led back to Los Angeles, but Isabel's warning chilled him. Was this victory, or her trap? Gray returned to Los Angeles, the Griffith Observatory looming over the city like a sentinel, its dome glowing under the stars. Clara met him in the shadows, her FBI badge glinting, her face grim. "You've got the antidote and evidence?" she asked, her voice tight. Gray handed her the vial and flash drive, his smirk faint. "Enough to bury the order." Clara's team analyzed the files, the clues converging: crimson lipstick from Rodeo Drive, matched to Isabel's brand, serpent symbols tying Sophia, Julian, and Isabel to the order, the antidote proving their method, and files exposing Lang's corruption, with Nathan's funding confirmed. The murder was solved. Isabel poisoned Victor for revenge, Nathan bankrolled it, and Sophia supplied the formula, coerced by the order. Gray's mind flashed to his mentor, the case now closed in spirit. "You'd be proud," he murmured, his voice soft, the pain easing. Clara nodded, her respect clear. "You're a ghost, Gray. Where to now?" He adjusted his cufflinks, his smirk returning. "Wherever they don't expect me." He vanished into the night, but his burner buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over." Gray's pulse quickened, the thrill of a new game stirring. The order was still out there, watching. What was their next move, and how would he stay 2 steps ahead?